Good evening. Welcome to the Brothas-in-law. Those of you who are new, I'm Corey Taylor, and tonight I'm joined with my brother, Mr. Michael Bradley. Both of us are prior law enforcement, police officers, and also prior military. So, thank you for joining us tonight. We got a good show lined up for you tonight. Another good discussion. And first, we get into all of that. I want to thank everybody that joined in last week. I mean, that was just a great conversation we had, and that's what we're looking for, to have those types of conversations, to answer your questions. Like I said, we're two former law enforcement, and we try to explain everything to you as what reasonable officers would do. And Mike and I like to think of ourselves as reasonable guys.
Reasonable person, right?
Right, as a reasonable person. So if you're new and you're gonna like this content of this video here, please go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button for us. If you're over on YouTube, if you're on Facebook watching us, hit that like button as well. Go ahead and hit that heart emoji on there for us, and then jump on over to YouTube and hit that like button over there as well. And thank you all for sharing that video out last week. We got a lot of great
Yeah,
feedback on it.
that was definitely a real good discussion.
Oh yeah.
Real quick. Last time we did a show on the paraplegic guy that was
Oh
sitting in a
yeah.
car. We did that. That was a couple of weeks back, few weeks back, something like that.
About a little over a month ago.
Oh, was it
Yeah.
that long? Okay.
Yeah, it's been a
So
minute. Yeah.
we just quick follow up I saw the other day on that. The guy, you guys who might have missed that show, it was a paraplegic guy that was pulled out of a car because he refused to get out of the car upon command from the officers, and the officers unfortunately had to drag him out of the car, and they grabbed his hair, his braids, his dreadlocks, in doing so. I just saw the other day that those officers were found clear of any wrongdoing, basically, and there wasn't anything unreasonable. And I heard one of the statements by the department saying that although pulling somebody's hair might be a shock to some, it's actually on the low end of the spectrum of use of force. So just to give you a quick heads up on that, I just happened to see that on, I think it was Instagram or something like that. I saw that.
Right.
But just as we expected, as we said, don't refuse to get out of the car when you got to get out of the car, folks. Okay. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. I see you, Zach. I see you, Frank. Corey, like you said last week, was a real good show because we had probably a whole lot of comments on that one.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was a lot, but we got a good one for you today. That we're gonna talk about out of Baltimore. And Corey, I'll let you set it up.
All right. Yeah, this is close to my man Frank here's neck of the wood. And I believe this happened back November 28th of last year. It was a call for service. A woman called the police stating that a family member had chased her out the house with a knife, and police were called there to investigate the situation. It is graphic, so just be aware of that. If you have a weak stomach or don't like graphic, please turn away. The video is about 4 minutes, but as usual, we'll do a play-by-play, let you know our thoughts and opinions on it, and if it's something what two reasonable brothers-in-laws would do. This is a great, I'd say, like a training video, if you will, because when you see how these officers gain entry into this residence and the tools that they use, this is, I would almost have to say, Mike, this is pretty much like textbook as far as how they gain entry into it, and the tools that they use. Hey, Saul, thanks for joining us tonight, my brother. And congratulations to you again. He just graduated the police academy here in Suffolk. So
all right, then.
Big ups
to you. Big ups to you.
So well, as usual, we'll play it out and we'll stop it where we need to and discuss what happens. But keep in mind, look at this as if you, the audience, are the law enforcement, and put your emotions aside and put race aside, and let's look at what the officers knew going into the call.
Absolutely. And also for our viewers, the information that you have right now, I know we're going to watch the video, but the information you have right now is these officers are responding to a call of a person who was chased out of the house with a man with a knife. Okay, so I want you to get in the mental mode of what you think you getting ready to do or what you're getting ready to confront, because that's where it starts for the officer. Is I get that call. Okay, as soon as I get that call, now I'm thinking, what am I possibly going to encounter and what am I going to do? So I want our viewers to start thinking along those lines, that while you're en route to this call, for lack of better words. Okay.
Right. All right, you ready?
Ready.
County Police!
Hey, Mike, let me know when you want to stop it.
Okay.
So you get no response.
Now, keep in mind, folks, this officer doesn't know if anyone in there is hurt. A man with a knife chased somebody out the house. We don't know if there's something going on in there where there's more victims or anything like that. So you're going to have to find that out, right? Now, pause for a second, Corey.
Yep.
So, as you can see, they're getting ready to force their way into this house. And some people, you might have some viewers that will ask the question, well, what gives them the right to force their way into this house? Right? The call was a man with a knife that was in this house had either threatened or chased somebody out the house. And me and Corey understand that the person that was chased out the house was the one who called the police. There
Correct.
is a man with a knife who might have some kind of issues in here, whether it's criminal, whether it's mental health, or whatever. We don't know. And I think these officers also understand that there is a second person that is still in the house that they have to confirm that too. So they don't know if this second person is a victim. They don't know if there's a stabbing that already occurred in this house. There's a lot of questions that these officers have to confirm before they just say, oh, we're done here. We're going to go ahead and walk away. No answer at the door. Right?
Right.
So let's keep that in mind, viewers. Let's continue here.
Okay, and then before we go on, let's look at the tools that they have. You have the one guy with the video camera, body camera on, where you see the majority of his arm. He has the deadly force. He has his service pistol out. The gentleman to the right, you see this, and you'll get a better look at it as they get ready to make entry into the house. He has that orange lanyard around him, and that indicates that that's the beanbag shotgun. That's a non-lethal weapon that he has. So everybody knows that he has that weapon, that type of, I should say, less than lethal weapon. And then you'll see another officer he'll have a taser. So you have three uses of force: less than lethal, and then lethal, or two less than lethal, and then lethal.
Right. And Zach makes a good comment. And he says, what if the person with the knife, right, was protecting his house? And people lie all the time. Yes, they do. Only knock one time before going in. Yeah, you might question that. Maybe, it could have knocked the second time, maybe, and just in case the guy didn't hear him the first time. Now keep in mind, the only reason, as I see as an officer, the only reason for me to force my way into someone's house is if, number one, I have identified a danger to someone's life, which is a guy with a knife who already chased somebody out, this reporting party, and the fact that there is someone else in there. You see what I'm saying? So is this someone else in there in danger? I don't know. So I have to find that out.
Right.
Did a stabbing already take place? We don't know, Corey. We don't know what all the information this reporting party told them yet either.
Correct. Correct.
Because the only thing we can see on YouTube was the reporting party was chased out the house with a man with a knife. We don't know if this person lived in the house that was the person chased out. Did this person live in the house? Did this person give these officers any information that would make them think someone could be in danger inside this house? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then that does give you the right to force entry into that house, because you're not just talking about the guy who might be suicidal in the house. You're talking about a guy with a knife who clearly is a danger to somebody because he chased somebody out the house. And there might be someone else in there that now might be a potential victim. So you got to confirm all those things. And that would be my reason for forcing entry into a home, is if I can establish that there is someone else in the house who may or may not be in danger. I have to find that out. So if you don't answer the door, at some point, based on the information I have, I might have to force my way in there, which obviously in this case, these officers felt the need to do that. If more information comes out as to why they forced entry, we'll let you guys know. But that's what I'm going to speculate on right now. What you think?
Yeah, Frank. Frank makes a good point. Yeah, at that point, it will become a wellness check. We know somebody's in there with a knife. Is he planning on doing harm to himself? There's a lot of what ifs. And those are the questions that have to be answered. Welcome, Meg. Glad to see you. And so, you want to make, at this point, Frank, you're correct. You want to make it a welfare check and get in there and see what's going on so you can assess the situation.
At minimum.
At minimum. So right? Here we go. All right, now you can see the lanyard on the shotgun.
Mm-hmm. As far as it goes, make yourself known, please.
That lanyard probably lets you know that that's a beanbag shotgun.
Come out! Drop your hands up, keep your hands up. Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Drop
so they see right
put
there.
The knife down! Shoot the beanbag! Drop it! Drop it! Beanbag! Beanbag! Drop it! Drop the knife!
I have to stop it right there, Mike.
Sure,
now,
sure.
You heard him say beanbag, and he shoots, right? And you saw they didn't have any effect on that individual.
Which is, not unusual, but still kind of odd, because a beanbag shotgun shot like that at you is definitely going to hurt. Okay.
Right. And this guy seemed like it was like, but it was like it didn't phase him, Mike. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is when, this is why we tell you, relax. A lot of times, these things aren't 100% effective all the time on people, right?
Or in this case, we don't know if this guy is doped up on something to where he didn't really feel that. Because I'm telling you, a beanbag shotgun hurts if you get shot with one.
Yeah.
And for him to just stand there like, okay, but he does walk back in there, right? Right. But now you can't let him walk back in there where you can't see him. You're going to have to go in there. So you got to keep a visual on him now at this point. Go ahead, Corey.
Right. All right.
Drop it! Lost him.
Okay, they lost him. So they don't know if he's going to get a gun now. Okay.
Drop the knife!
Right.
Beanbag. Now they got a taser.
Now he transitions to his taser.
I'm gonna taser. Drop the knife. I'm gonna taser. Drop the knife.
Pause it. Pause it. Pause it,
Taser.
Corey.
Hit him again.
Pause it. Now, if you notice, you had him run. One guy walked in with lethal, which is a firearm. Another guy walked in with a taser, and they already tried the beanbag shotgun. So these officers had all those tools at their disposal at that moment. Now, I don't know how common that is across the country. Now, that is common in where I worked, where if we're going to a situation like this, we're already preparing what we're going to have and who's going to have it, who's got lethal, who's got non-lethal, and who's going to be calling the commands. We already formulated that plan before we even got to that door. So as you can see, that's why you have an officer actually aiming his firearm, because if this guy with the knife decides to attack, guess what? He's going to get shot with the firearm. Yeah. Okay, the firearm is your backup for deadly force.
Let me ask this question. And Preston, if you're still on, brother, is that common tactics for you all as well? Do you all have the beanbag shotgun? Just shoot me or give me a thumbs up in the chat so we know. Because I think that's great how they go in like that, and you make that transition, because he came in there with the shotgun first, the beanbag shotgun, then he transitioned to his taser, right? You're moving through all these use of forces that quickly, right? You're making those transitions. Now, unfortunately, the gentleman gets shot.
Keep in mind, you can skip steps. You don't have to go non-lethal to lethal as in 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not like you got to hit 3 before you hit 4. You can skip all the way to 4 if you need to. Like if that guy, like I said before, if that guy with the knife decides to come and attack and move forward, advance on the officers, then that could be a reason to use jump straight to lethal force in that situation. What you think?
Well, and I think that's what happens here, because at the point, he hit him again with the taser, and it still had no effect on him, and he was making that approach to the officer with the taser, and then the officer behind him right there, who has deadly or his service weapon out, then goes in and takes the subject down. Preston says, to my knowledge, we do not, but we do have taser and we use them and would in this situation, but would also have lethal. As of right now, I'm seeing good officers, but right before you paused, the guy started moving to the officer with the taser, and his partner behind him shot. Right, that's exactly right, Preston. And I think that's just one of the things as a community why we do these videos, to point things like this out, resources or tools that officers could use. And these are the type of things that you can go back into your community when your local county sheriffs have town hall meetings and things like that. These are the type of things you can bring up and mention to them. This is what you would like to see the officers use. The more tools and resources that they have to try to not have to use deadly force, the better off these officers can feel safe, and then we don't have another loss of life taken. But at the end of the day, there's gonna still be a life taken, because at some point, like you see here, those things don't work. You're left with no other alternative but to use deadly force.
And Zach wants you to rewind it a little bit before you finish playing it. Just
go back
just a tad bit. Because I think we started talking and when that's good.
All right, here we go.
I'm gonna taser. Drop the knife. I'm gonna taser. Drop the knife. Drop the knife. Taser.
He does try to taser. Doesn't work. When you see him started going towards officer, that's why you see deadly force.
That's right.
Where's it? I got the knife. You got the knife? I got the knife. Oh my God, the taser. I got
somebody jump back, but I'm gonna skip to the door.
Okay. So he's down
Right
now.
now-
They're looking for the other person that's supposed to be in
You got
this
the
house.
knife? I got the knife. I got the taser. I got
All right, so we're gonna skip up here to that point.
Okay.
He started loose talking.
So
I got to reposition that.
we feel that they had other information that somebody else was in that house. They got information that they were in the garage, but they don't know the status of that individual.
Okay. Which is why they would have forced entry into the house in the first place.
Right.
And I'm going to talk about that a little bit after the video, but here we go.
Okay.
One of you help me out. Move at least. Yeah. I need to sit him up so I can see his wounds.
Keep in mind, they believe this person is in this room or garage or wherever. They don't know what's going on with this person. If there's what's going on.
Mom's covered up.
All right. So mom's body was found in the garage. She had already been killed by this guy, we're presuming, and he had covered up her body. So that tells me that they had enough information to force their way into that house, regardless. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of calls today, law enforcement today, there was a time where if you had someone who was, say, suicidal and was in their house by themselves, there was a time when patrol officers would feel the need to rush in the house and try to save this person who says they're going to kill themselves, whether it's shoot themselves or something. There was a time when officers felt that way, and that has changed now. And I'll tell you why. If we get a call of someone who's in a house by themselves and they happen to be suicidal with a firearm and claim they're going to shoot themselves, the officers are steering away from forcing themselves into that house as long as no one else is in danger. Because the way the courts have seen it is we don't want to be the people who will extradite or create an exigent circumstance by entering the house. If we enter the house, the guy hears us enter the house and he decides to go ahead and cap himself. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's where the thought process is today. Where if we get that call of a guy who's suicidal in the house by themselves, no one else is in danger but the guy who's claiming he's going to hurt himself. Now, I don't know the statistics of how often do they actually hurt themselves versus not. We don't have those statistics, but we won't force our way into that house. We will wait. You'll have to call us back if he ends up killing himself. Then we'll come back. But we're not going to create an exigent circumstance by forcibly going into a house, as long as there's no one else in the house. That is okay. To force this guy to hurt himself or kill himself. And I got to tell you, Corey, when they started doing this as a veteran officer at that point, it took a little bit for me to mentally grasp that we're just going to walk away from a guy that's suicidal by himself in the house. But after a while, I started to understand why we would do that. But keep in mind, folks, I think a lot of citizens don't realize that. They'll call and they'll say, my brother's in the house and he's getting ready to shoot himself. Anybody else in the house? No one else in the house but him. Okay, well, let us know if he does end up killing himself. I mean, you can have I'm sure they have other things now that they didn't have when I was working, like special teams, mental health professionals that will come out on the scene. Maybe they can try to contact him. Maybe they'll try to talk him out of committing suicide, see if they can get him to open the door. If they have enough, if he calms down enough to open the door for him, try to get some mental health intervention in there immediately at that particular time. Okay.
See, that would have been my question there. What I think a lot of people would be asking is, okay, well, why not treat it as a mental health situation and not have to resort to deadly force.
Yeah.
Why not set up a perimeter and get negotiator out there to talk him out. Now,
Yeah.
again, you don't know the status of the other person, and unfortunately, in this case, it was his mother who was deceased. But it's one of those things. I think you have to make that decision right then and there that we need. A life is at stake here, right? You have to get in there, and I think a lot of times too, Mike, situation dictates whether or not you're gonna set that perimeter or you're going to breach the house and go in. That's just something officers have to make on spot. Again, like we said last week, we can always sit back and Monday morning quarterback these situations, but unless you're actually there, it can become complex. And put yourself in that officer's position. What would you do? Think like, okay, what if that was my mom and there? Would I just sit back and want to, set a perimeter and still run the risk of him getting it? Now, keep in mind too, what probably changed that, nobody answered the door. So, like you said a few minutes ago, Mike, you don't know if he would have, killed himself already, right? We have to gain entry, and like Frank said, now it's welfare check. We need to find out if anybody in here is hurt or deceased.
Yeah, and like Zach said, clearly something else was said to dispatch when the call came in. Yeah, I think you're right, Zach. Clearly something, these officers had enough information to make them feel justified in forcing entry into this house from the beginning. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to assume that that's the case. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? We'll assume that that's the case, that's why they forced their way in the house, because they knew that not only was this guy in there, but somebody else was in there possibly hurt or something like that. In this case, it was
just by their actions and what we just saw. I mean, that was there was a lot of indicators that there was more information that was known than what was put out by this other group that put this video out and what was on the internet. So clearly, a lot of times you do. Now, what you don't know is the mental health aspect of this. What heck, we could probably say anybody that picks up a weapon and uses it against somebody else has mental issues.
Oh, sure. Right? I mean, you could almost assume mental health plays a role in just about every type of call for service like this. Right. You see what I'm saying? Right. And when they opened the door, the guy had the knife, but he wasn't talking. He wasn't saying anything. He didn't say, "I want to kill myself." He didn't say anything. So the officers were presented with a situation where they knew that someone else was in the house and they didn't know what happened to him. And they had to make this person who was clearly a threat directly in front of them safe, which is put the knife down, handcuff him. At minimum, he chased somebody out the house with a knife. Now, given the circumstances, that could be a crime, obviously, right there. Right. So they knew that he was a suspect right out the gate because he was the one with the knife.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Right. So they clearly their priority was to make that guy safe, make him no longer be a threat.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And here's a flip side. Now, when you look at this, you see that the subject was white, and the officers were white, but they still shot the guy. So you can't put race in these things. You have to look at what you have. Now, what if the guy with the knife was black? Probably would have changed the whole scenario about how the coverage of this would have played out on media. You didn't hear about this shit.
Thanks for joining us, Frank.
Right. And so you gotta leave that stuff off to the side and look at what you have and work with what you got. It just sucks that anybody loses their life in an officer involved shooting. You don't want nobody to have to die. It'd have been a lot different if the guy, once he got hit with those beanbags, he dropped the knife. Hey, done deal. It's done and over. You know what I mean,
yep.
Mike?
Done deal. Handcuff him, sit him down on the sofa, look through the house to make sure there's no other victims in the house. At which case, unfortunately, it was. But let's say if it wasn't, that's even better, right? A lot of different things. Yeah. And when you talk about race, the reason why I don't like to enter race into these police situations right out the gate is because race or not, you still have an incident that you have to determine if it was reasonable or not. You still have an incident with a man with a knife. You see what I'm saying? Black, white, blue, green, or brown, you still got a man with a knife that you have to address as the officer. Doesn't matter what color he was. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's why we try to look at these incidents, just the incident alone. Keep emotions out of it. Keep race out of it. Let's look at the incident first. Look at that. Was it done by a reasonable? Would a reasonable officer think they could do that or not? Yeah, and this is our opinion. We look at ourselves. Me and Corey and I look at ourselves as we would be the reasonable officers, right? So we want to give you these incidents and just tell you what we would have done, and just leave it at that. I think when you start entering race in there, you start muddying the waters, and you start losing focus of the incident itself. The facts of the incident itself. That's all.
And I agree with you there, Preston. And he said, my thoughts are the officers moved forward and didn't stay in the living room and got closer because he was standing behind that island and they didn't know what was behind that island. And that's fact. You got to close in on him because you don't know what's behind it. You don't know if he has an assault rifle behind there or if somebody's back there ready to ambush him. You don't know. So that's why they had to advance on him like that. And that's why he was shot so quickly because, there's they say that 20-foot rule. And what that means is when you're within 20 feet and you have a knife and I have a gun, there's still that chance you could still kill me with that knife. If you're making progress towards me, you get that forward momentum that's going to carry you to me still. If you're hyped up on drugs and you're not feeling no shots,
absolutely,
you're gonna come towards me and still have the opportunity. Yeah, and you still have the opportunity to kill me. So it's that 20-foot rule. Within 20 feet, you had that knife, and I'm telling you to drop, and you don't. I'm gonna put you down, and that's just how these guys acted. So. What do y'all think? Is this what two reasonable officers would have done or should have done? And then is that something that, you would have done if you were the officer?
Yeah. Let me see your comments, folks. I'd like to see what you guys would have done. That's a good point, Preston, you made. Because, people would ask, why didn't they stay back? Because once you got your eye on the target, you don't want to lose sight of that target. Because, like you say, your heart drop when you lose sight. Because, like Corey was saying, you don't know if he's going in there to get a gun and come back blazing. You don't know if he's going to shoot whoever's in the house or stab whoever else is in the house. Excuse me. So, that's why you don't want to lose sight of a suspect, and that's why you wouldn't just back out and lose that advantage once you've had it.
Yeah.
So it's a tough situation, no, all the way around. But at least this kind of call, Corey, gives people an idea of something to think of how they would respond to this call. How would you prepare yourself for this kind of call? As I said before, when I was as a patrol officer, we would go to this kind of call right away. We already formulated our plan of who's going to do what. You see what I'm saying? So we already know what could happen, and we already know what we want to happen. All of that. You see what I'm saying? And we always have to be prepared for the unexpected. That's why you got all three use of forces right out there at the same time. Ready to go.
Also, too, Mike. also too, Mike, they also had a dog out there as well. Now, someone could say, why did you just send the dog in?
Good point.
Yeah, but you also got to think about the dog's life as well, right? The man had a weapon. Would I send my dog in there with him? And because, and I'll be honest, the handlers get attached to these dogs. I mean, they're human too, right? The handlers get attached to these dogs, and you got to think, man. The handler, man, I'm not sending my dog in there, and he's got a knife, and because what's the dog gonna do? The dog is gonna attack him. He gets it on one arm, he's got the knife in the other hand. He can stab and kill the dog.
Yeah,
right. So,
and I've heard canine handlers say just that. They'll say, "Well, we know there's a guy in there with a knife. Why am I going to send my dog in there to confront the guy with a knife?" You see what I'm saying? Or gun. Even if he had a firearm, we know he's in there with a firearm. Why am I going to send my dog in there with a guy that he's going to get shot? You see what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a good point. We might have to have a canine officer on this show one day and put a whole show together on how they respond to calls, But
I think that would be great. Yeah. Preston, I think they did a great police work. Unfortunately, things went not the way anyone would want it to, but officers, gotta be safe. And it's definitely, it definitely is a great training video, Preston. Like I said earlier, we do these things to try to help you get into the mindset of what an officer has to go through, the things they have to process. The whole tactics are pre-planned out. When you're on your way to that call for service, you're already thinking about these things. Even when we're on when we used to get into pursuits, like I'm thinking about when I get this individual stopped. I'm thinking about how am I position my car. If he does this, then I need to do that. We're already pre-gaming, as you say, of what we want to do. So when you get there, you're already putting it into action. You're not thinking or second guessing yourself. You're going right in there and you're going to detain this person or whatever it is you're going to do. You're going to stop the threat if need be. So you're always thinking about these things, and a lot of times these officers aren't going in here to these situations. Or was he black or is what? That, like I said, color doesn't matter. It's the fact that somebody's life is in jeopardy behind those doors, and we need to find out and we need to stop it before somebody does get hurt. And that's what it boils down to. So I think it's a great video. I think it's a lot of good points and takeaways from it. We hope you all liked it and got something out of it. Go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to it if you're just jumping on here. Also, if you can take a moment to go over onto YouTube and hit that like button over there as well, we greatly appreciate it. Let's see. Oh shoot, we got another comment here. What's it saying?
People have to understand distance is life. And I like that. And that goes both ways, whether you need to get closer or get further back. Okay. It's a vague statement, but definitely has stuck with me. I hear you, Preston. I hear you.
Distance is life. I like that.
And folks, this is what officers do in their briefings before their shifts. There's a lot of times we I can't tell you, we've looked at countless incidents on video, on YouTube videos or whatever, and we'll critique it. Yes, Monday morning quarterback for us. We understand that. But a lot of times when you see a real life situation and how these officers handle it in real life, it does give an officer the opportunity to have an inside look of, if this happened to me, what would I do? And that's what we want our officers to think. You know what I mean? Have a plan, know what you would do, don't just approach an incident, a call for service blindly. You always assume the worst until you work it back to make sure everything is safe. So as you saw, they had deadly force ready, just like they had non-lethal force ready, because you don't know what's going to happen. You want to be prepared for all of it.
Right. Rather have it and not need and not have it.
There you go. That's it.
But let's jump back onto the mental health aspect of this, because how much information, Mike, do you feel that officers normally get when going into a call for service like this? I mean, I know there's HIPAA and you can't, at this point, do you try to engage this guy in conversation to find out what his mental state is, or do you just go in and execute like these guys did?
Well, it depends on the situation. Obviously, in this
Right.
situation, their priority was to get that guy to put the knife down so that they could talk to him or find out what's going on and do whatever they needed to do. That guy didn't allow them enough time to consider any other things. You see what I'm saying? So normally, if let's say this guy did put the knife down, right? Yeah, you could talk to the guy. Now, obviously, they had to search it out. We don't know what information they had, at least all of the information they had before entering this house. But if they felt someone else was in there that could be a victim, obviously, once they secured him, they got to make sure there's no other victims in the house, which they did. But let's say this was just a mental health issue, a call for service where, let's say, a sister was run out of her house by her brother who chased her out with a knife, and then her brother threatened to commit suicide. Let's assume it was that kind of call for service, right? So yeah, if you can make contact with the guy, definitely you could try to do that. You see what I'm saying? Let's say then that once you make contact with the guy and if he's sitting there and he's not armed at that moment or anything like that, yeah, try to talk to him, find out what's going on. Now you change hats and you become a mental health professional, for lack of better words.
Right.
You know what I mean? You try to determine if this is a situation where this guy needs some emergency psychiatric help. You see what I'm saying? Nowadays, a lot of departments have units specifically for that purpose on patrol. You'll go to a call on patrol, and then you have your mental health team right next to you who are mental health professionals to some degree, and they will come and talk to the guy and try to determine if he needs emergency psychiatric treatment. So mental health always plays a role as far as how we can address it. But keep in mind, folks, that there are many times where the situation doesn't allow the officer the ability to try to attack a mental health aspect. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
A man with a gun is a man with a gun, no matter what kind of mental health he has.
Right. Same with man with a knife.
Right. If he's a threat to me, autistic, mental health, whatever mental health he might have, he's still a threat to me. So I still got to make the threat go away before I even address anything else. And unfortunately, a lot of times, Corey, as you know, a lot of times a suspect won't allow you the amount of time it takes for you to determine if there's a mental health issue.
I'm glad you mentioned autistic, and maybe that's one video we got to pull. I remember seeing a video a little while ago.
I know you. We're gonna have to talk about that one next one. I remember that one.
I think it happened down in Florida, and the young man was very autistic, so he couldn't comprehend anything. But allegedly, he was going and breaking, or now I want to say breaking it, but went to the wrong house and was trying to gain entry into that house, and the police were called, and the young man was not responding to their commands, so they ended up tasing him, and he ended up falling and getting himself hurt. And all along, they didn't know he was autistic. They didn't know he had mental health issues, right? All they knew is what that call for service was, and they acted accordingly to what that call for service was. Now, like you just said, Mike, how much time do you have? Now, in that situation, maybe it could have done a little bit more, but it's alleged break-in, right? You're a little more amped up, knowing that, okay, now I'm in that mindset. Now I'm going to handle a possible break-in and entry.
Right. In that situation, but right. I place countless people on what we call out here in California 5150 holds, where you have presented yourself as a danger to yourself or a danger to someone else, and you have a mental health issue that requires you have emergency medical attention, psychiatric emergency medical attention right then and there. I placed countless people on that. But on all those calls, I had time to make contact and talk with the guy on most of those calls. And the ones that didn't have time to do that, it was because of some action that they did that required me to step it up a little bit. You see what I'm saying? I didn't have time to sit down on the couch and tell me your feelings. You see what I'm saying? A lot of times officers don't confront that way. They don't have that ability to say, let's sit down and let's talk about it. There are some calls for service where, unfortunately, there's no talking about it. We got to take action on what you're doing now, and then we can talk about it. You know, that happens a lot, unfortunately, you know. So it's not that officers just miss mental health. That's not it at all.
Right. I mean, you are trained a little on mental health, like key factors you look for in individuals. Like you look for what is not normal, normal behavior, and clearly in that case, I think we will have to do put that video on and talk about it. But you know, it's just a sad situation. I mean, it's just policing is not pretty.
No.
If you think it's pretty, you're wrong. It's not pretty. It just isn't. I mean, I don't know how else to say it or what kind of other words to put it into, but it's just not pretty. And so, you know, back to this video here, you have to look at those things. If it's a mental health issue, you know, could there have been other actions they could have taken? Did they do the right thing? And at the end of the day, these officers going to have to go home. They want to go home. All right. And the number one thing, like Mike said earlier, is secure the scene, make the scene safe. If you had the opportunity to tell, well, they did give him the opportunity before they even went into the house. Hey, drop the knife, drop the knife. He refused to drop the knife. They started using the non-lethal. He still didn't drop it. So, you know, your escalation of forces, like you said, Mike, you may go from 1, skip 2 and 3 and go straight to 4 and using deadly force. You know, it's just everything. It doesn't happen like if this was Hollywood. You know, this is real life. This ain't Hollywood. This ain't scripted, right? And that's what we want the citizens to understand. It's not scripted. It's not going to go in the corners of how you want to write it on the script, and it needs to be played out just like that. It doesn't happen that way, folks, and you need to get your head wrapped around that.
Yeah, Preston says he can tell us how much training we get. You know, it's a good point. I don't know about you, Corey, but out here in California, we have something called crisis intervention training, CIT training, where we do have a training about mental health issues, people with anxiety, or when they're even homeless people who have mental health issues and how to handle them, what sets them off and what doesn't set them off. Someone who is schizophrenic or someone is just plain flat out suicidal and depressed, you know, things like that. We do get training on how to confront those people. And after that training, a lot of your training for that mental health issue is on the job stuff. You handle enough people with mental health, you're gonna get a feel of how to talk to them, how to interact with them, especially if you have to do it on an enforcement level, you know. So it's
that's
tough.
a good thing, Mike, because you get to know the resources that they need to get the help that they need. You know, Zach says police, EMT, military, you all literally signing up to potentially see the worst things that happen in life. Yeah, God bless you all, and it's a special person who can deal with these types of situations. Thanks, Zach. I mean, you really do see some things that that really hit you in the gut and in the heart, you know.
And Zach, you also right. Yeah, they does send counselors out now. They got counseling teams that respond with patrol officers in many instances. Now, I don't know how successful that has been going up to this point, you know. But you know what, Zach, to be honest with you, as a former officer, I really wouldn't have a problem with the team coming in, a mental health team, if you will, coming in with me to talk to somebody who's 5150. It's just that you got to find that gray area where, okay, the counselor versus the police officer who has to take action. You see, you got to find that where that line is on every call for service like that and determine when is it that I'm going to step in and take over for the counselor. You see what I'm saying? That's the only part I see with that. But hey, if they want to go in, there's some agencies out here in California where they don't even send officers to 5150s anymore. They just send the counseling team, for lack of better words, send a counseling team to deal with it. And the counseling team, if they need police, they'll call us, you know? So yeah, a lot has changed since I've been a cop out here.
Yeah. Yeah, Press said he just took a class 2 weeks ago on mental health. Yeah, and you guys get a lot of calls for service on that. I'm going to tell you that right up front. You guys get a lot of call for service on that. So you have to be cautious of how you interact with them, because you don't know their mindset, right? You don't know. They can still have a weapon on them. You have to. That's why I wouldn't be for that, Mike. Because I should have sent it to you. I read an article, I think it was like a week or so ago, where two counselors went to a house. I think it was for mental health, and they ended up getting shot. So that's I don't know if that's a good idea, and I definitely wouldn't want a counselor coming with me on a call for service. Again, it depends on what that call for service is.
It does. It does.
At the time. You know, if a situation like this, no, counselor is not going to work in this one. Not when you know.
My thing is a situation like this one. Let me handle the call first, and if we have an opportunity for the counseling team to take over and do something different, okay. But let me determine when that is. That's my only thing. I don't mind the counselor with me. You see what I'm saying? But let me determine when it's necessary and appropriate for the counselor to do what they do.
All right. Well, if you're gonna do that, I will want that counselor to be a sworn officer.
I hear what you're saying. And I understand why.
I say that because we have some people in the state legal department. Before they went over to the legal department, they were they still are sworn officers working in the state legal department, but they're actually lawyers. They went to law school, so they're sworn officers. So I say that, well, if you're gonna, that's fine, but if you're going to send one out there with me, because what if they go, they lose it and then they start shooting out rounds? Now you have to protect yourself as well. Right. So how much do you really want to put yourself in that situation? Right. I much prefer, if you're going to do that, okay, you need to be a sworn officer. You need to go to training, everything like that, become a sworn law enforcement officer. And then, you can ride with me and have one on every shift. Okay. But that would be your primary, is to go to call for service for mental health. And then as backup, if need to get hands dirty, if you will, then you can interact and help bring the situation to a resolution.
And I agree with Zach where he says everyone can agree de-escalation is always the best route. Absolutely. But it's not always the case. That's right. I agree with that too. Of course, de-escalation is always the first thing we want to do. But you know what? There's many forms of de-escalation. Me showing up and say, sit down on the curb or put your gun down is the start of some de-escalation. You see what I'm saying? I think some people don't have a grasp on exactly what de-escalation is, but that's part of it. And he says, Matthew Marks says, policing is not counseling, policing is front line.
Yes,
I agree with that.
police officers wear so many hats, though, Mike.
That's
and
the
Matt,
thing. I agree with
that's
that
the thing.
partly,
We
Matt.
have to be able to. You have to be a counselor.
Yeah, you got to be
have
able to talk to people.
You have to be able to talk to people, or be approachable, and to have answers for them, and be able to guide them in the right direction. So you're going to be a counselor. I get what you're saying.
Definitely. As a patrol officer, I felt that I was always good at talking to people, and I can't tell you how many times I've talked my way out of a physical confrontation with somebody. You see what I'm saying, on the street. So you do got to be, like Corey was saying, you got to wear many hats, and you got to look at definitely communication is probably the most important aspect you should have, or the most important trait you should have as an officer, is communication skills. You got to know how to talk to people, when to talk to them certain ways, and who you need to talk to and who you don't need to talk to. You see what I'm saying? You can't go up to everybody with the same enforcement intensity, because they're not going to perceive it the same way. They're not going to process it the same way. You see what I'm saying? So there is a balance you got to find in there between being authoritarian and being someone who just you got to talk to them. You see what I'm saying? Keep that in mind.
Yeah, Zach, you're 100% correct, because, like, the situation changes so fluently, right? You're talking to a guy, he's pointing the gun at you, then all of a sudden he flips it and points it at himself. Now you went from being in a defensive posture to now lifesaving, trying to talk this guy out of not shooting himself in the head.
Absolutely.
So the hat switch. And then you might go back to being in defensive, where you're pointing your gun at him, he's pointing right back at you. You're gonna go through multiple hats in that situation. And even after that, you do shoot, just like in this video here, where the police officers shot him. Once they secure the weapon and got him situated, now they become EMTs, right? They're administering first aid until they get rescue on scene. So that's another hat that the officer has to wear. So and it's a situation often that you don't like to get yourself into, but when you're in it, you got to be able to switch those hats. You have to be able to adjust to the situation. And so I agree with you, Zach. I mean, it's just unreal, the many hats. And I don't think, Mike, citizens really grasp that, how many hats police officers wear during one call for service. You know what I mean? It can't. I had it to where I was talking to a mental health patient or citizen, and then next thing you know, I'm putting hands on. It just happens. It just happens that quick.
Yeah, happens that quick. And Preston makes a good point. Communication is key, and policing is different in different parts of the country. I understand that too. Policing in Virginia is 10 times different than Cali, and it's just different. And I definitely can understand that, Preston. Definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what everybody has to get. Virginia is totally different than California. So what might work out there is not going to work here. So that's why everything, you go department to department to department from here to California, you're going to find a variety of different policies and how they handle things. I mean, there's policy how you should be handling a mental health case. You know what I mean? And
right.
So it's different. And if I was to go to be a law enforcement out in California, man, it'd be a rude awakening for me, because it may be a lot worse out there than what I'm used to here in Virginia. You know what I mean?
Or not. It depends on where you go. You're right. It's just a lot is different. A lot of agencies are different as far as how they handle certain things. But keep in mind, a deadly threat is a deadly threat to no matter where in the country you are. And you're going to handle a deadly threat the same way. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So keep that in mind too.
All right. We had an hour. We had an hour tonight. So good conversation. We thank y'all for joining us tonight. If you want to continue to chat afterwards, I'll be around. If you want to hit us up on Facebook, you got hit Mike up, and Michael Bradley, you got him question for him. He's on Facebook, and I'm on Facebook. So if you got other questions for us, hit us up. We'd love to respond back to it. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that like button on YouTube, and hit that heart emoji there on Facebook for us, and share this out to everybody. Thank you for joining us, Max, Zach, Preston, Frank, Meg. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We love y'all, and we will see y'all next week for another show. Mike?
Yep. That's it. That's it. You guys take care. Have a good weekend. For those of you whose Friday it is. And you guys take care.
All right. Take care, y'all. Peace. Preston, be safe out there, brother.